This lecture is discussing about bioethics as a concept of love. Is bioethics a love of life? Well, let's explore what is love. Starting in section 2 of the text, Bioethics is a love of life, we can see the picture of the cave of Machpelah. This is in Hebron and Palestine. It is a sacred place to Muslims, Jews and Christians. The stones at the bottom here, built from the period of King Herod. King Herod is described in the Bible. It's over 2,000 years old. Underneath this building is the cave of the fathers. The cave of the fathers of these religions. Abraham, the famous ancestor of both Jews and Muslims, is buried under here. Isaac and Jacob. So the famous patriarchs and two of the famous matriarchs are buried under this building. What is the love we have of our ancestors, of our traditions? How can people still worship in this building? This building has a synagogue, a mosque and a church in the same building. For some periods of history they could worship together. They all still share a great reverence for this space and this place. People come on their holy days to worship. It makes us ask about what is love. The state parliament of Kanaka in Bangalore in India is inscribed with very important words for any government. Government's work is God's work. Let us hope so. But this is following yet another religion. If we ask people what images they have of love, answers might include love is family, warm, God, happy, difficult, many others. Yet all will consider love as something central to our existence, and something critical to the human existence. Okay. In nature there are positive forces, which Epictetus called love and hate, or harmony and discord. These forces are what cause the four elements, earth, air, fire and water, to intermingle and later separate. Love causes the elements to be attracted to each other and build up in some particular form or person. The 1997 movie, The Fifth Element, used these images from ancient philosophy and added, of course, the essential element to the universe that could solve the problem and save the world was love. Love is a governing principle that held things in unity. Human beings are spiritual beings, sharing emotions such as love and hate, greed and generosity. As Vereen in 1972 wrote, love itself is generally thought of as a power that exists within man's ethical life, through which he judges and shapes the customs of his social life. Love is generally regarded as the power of man to transcend the differences that exist between persons and in the world generally, and to feel the unity of things. Iliad in 1987 wrote, the concept of love is one form or another, has informed the definition and development of almost every human culture and history of the world, past and present, east and west, primitive and complex. There have been many writers who have argued that love is the single most powerful force in the universe. From Mao Tzu in China, Narada in India, Plato in Greece, Augustine and Talade Charan in Christianity. Any thought system which fails to acknowledge such a power as the power of love and the character of human emotions is destined to fail as a source of our moral guidance. There are a variety of approaches to the definition of love, which Eliot summarized as 1. The nature of the recipient or object of which the affection is bestowed, either animate or inanimate, divine or human, male or female, heterosexual or homosexual. The type of feeling, idea and attitude that motivates the experience. The emotional, aesthetic or moral quality of the experience itself, ranging from the basest forms of carnal desire through the loftiest forms of human affection and reverence to the purest expression of love as divine grace. The emotional, moral and spiritual effects that it exerts upon all parties included in a love relationship. Well, that's one definition. What's your definition? Are you in love? What do you think about love? Is love so related to our ethics? I think it is. But let's look at further discussion of love. Each dictionary that you look at has a range of definitions of love, but through the use of quotations below, we can get a range of the use of the term and how the concepts included in the word love can be useful for ethics. We can also think of different physical images that symbolize love. A fundamental way of reasoning that people have when making decisions is to balance doing good against doing harm. We could group these ideals under the idea of love, though the question of benefits for whom and harm for whom is central to deciding whether an action is one of love or not. One of the underlying philosophical ideas of society is to pursue progress. Isn't that true? We try always to pursue progress, to do good. The most common justification for progress is the pursuit of improved medicines and health, which is doing good. The failure to attempt to do good is a form of harm, the sin of omission. This is the principle of beneficence. This is a powerful impetus for further research into ways of improving health and agriculture and living standards. The term beneficence suggests more than actions of mercy, rather the ideal is love. The principle of beneficence asserts an obligation to help others further their important and legitimate interests. It means that if you see somebody drowning, providing you can swim, you have to try to help them by jumping in the water with them. If you cannot swim, you have to try to find another way to save them. This case also includes the weighing of risks to avoid doing harm. This is another integral part of love, and it is because we respect life. The concept is most often expressed at an individual level, whereas justice is the expression of a concept at a societal level. And you can see it's justice in the collective action of many to help. This picture is from the side of the Taj Mahal. Although it was built to express romantic love, and it's actually the tomb of a dead lover, the beautiful designs of the flowers and plants and the artistic patterns have made this a revered symbol of love, but probably much more than romantic love. So we can see then the concept of love in the broad terms has been discussed very widely, and it is the binding force of the universe. In the next section of the chapter on what is love, we look at some quotations. Now, there's been more books written about love, there's been more songs written about love, there's been more music invented about love than any other subject. And in fact, literature and love have been interdependent. This is the same in medieval ages and the same for a long time. It dates back for millennia. This is a Forbidden Palace in Beijing. I hope you have a chance to go there. It is no longer forbidden, but at the time when the emperor was living there, it was forbidden to enter. And this was built to show love to the emperor and to gain respect of people. And of course, people who were fortunate enough to be invited into the palace could enjoy and appreciate the love of nature, the buildings, the art that was collected, all the treasures that were given. Well, love can be interpreted in many ways, but I'm going to focus on love defined as giving of oneself in service to others and a friendship relationship, as perhaps readers will accept without written evidence that romantic love is global. The selection of quotations about love is presented below, suggesting that love of others as a principle of ethics in literature is universal in scope. And I want to start with Confucius. Perhaps this is inspired by the picture of the Forbidden Palace. Confucius in the Analects, which are written in the 6th century before Christ, said, "To love a thing means wanting it to live." And that seems to be a reasonable motivation to want things to live. He also wrote, "Can there be a love which does not make demands on those who are the objects of love?" So, if we love something or someone, there are demands upon us, moral demands. Erich Fromm, in The Art of Loving, which is written 2,600 years later, in 1956, said, "If I truly love one person, I love all persons, I love the world, I love life. If I can say to somebody else, I love you, I must be able to say, I love in you everybody, I love through you the world, I love in you also myself." Hippides, going back to 2,500 years ago, said, "Love is all we have, the only way that each can help each other." In the Hippocratic Corpus, one of the books of the Corpus, Precepts, one of about 100 books, says, "Where there is love of man, there is also love of the art." In this case, the art is the art of medicine, philotechnia. So, if there's love of man, there's love of the art. If we love others, we will try to do our best with the skills and the things that we have. And we will learn and study hard. One of my favorites is a rather long quotation from Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is a contemporary of Confucius. He lived in the 6th century BC, and he spoke of universal love as opposed to a family-centered love that was preferred by Confucius. So Confucian family-centered love, which has been more dominant in Chinese culture and East Asian culture and perhaps around the world, is centered on expanding circles of concern. Okay, who are we concerned about? First ourselves and our family, maybe our teachers, our community. It extends gradually. So Lao Tzu wants to propose something different. It is a familial love. It should be replaced by the way of universal love and mutual benefit. It is to regard other people's countries as one's own, regard other people's families as one's own, regard other people's person as one's own. Consequently, When feudal lords love one another, they will not fight in the fields. When heads of families love one another, they will not upset one another. When individuals love one another, they will not injure one another. When ruler and minister love each other, they'll be kind and loyal. When father and son love each other, they'll be affectionate and filial. When brothers love each other, they'll be peaceful and harmonious. When all the world and all the people in the world love one another, the strong will not overcome the weak, the many will not oppress the few, the rich will not insult the humble, and the rich will not insult the poor, the honored will not despise the humble, the cunning will not deceive the ignorant. Because of universal love, all the calamities, upsetations, hatred and animosity in the world will be prevented from arising. If we did not know that this was written by Lao Tzu, it could have been written by any of the well-known prophets or religious saints or leaders. It talks of the universal love of everyone being equal. And we see still these same problems of social gradients and social divisions and class divides today. If a medical doctor was to follow universal love, they will act always to love their patient and to do best. They will not be cunning, they will not deceive the patient, and if they make a mistake, they will talk about it to the person. Mahatma Gandhi in 1927 said, "Love is the strongest force the world possesses, and yet it's the humblest imaginable. The more efficient a force is, the more silent and subtle it is. Love is the subtlest force in the world." He wrote also, "To see the universal and all-pervading spirit of truth face to face, one must be able to love the meanest of creation as oneself. The path of self-purification is hard and steep. To attain perfect purity, one has to become absolutely passion-free in thought, speech and action, to rise above the opposing currents of love and hatred, attachment and revulsion." So you can see, while love is the strongest force and the force that led him to the ultimate decolonization of India, which led to decolonization of the rest of the world. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi is, I think, the most significant philosopher of the 20th century. His actions led to a reshaping of the world we know. And many of you listening to this lecture will have grown up in countries that used to be colonies. And these colonies were liberated thanks to thinking about the power of love. He went further to say that self-purification is hard and steep, and it even goes above the opposing currents of love and hatred. The French Catholic philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, in The Phenomenon of Man, in 1959, said, "Love alone is capable of uniting living beings in such a way as to complete and fulfill them, for it alone takes them and joins them by what is deepest in themselves." In fact, this is quite a deep concept, isn't it? For it unites living beings. It is a binding force. It's something we've heard at the beginning of the lecture. Remember Hippocrates from Greece? Love is the uniting force of the elements of the universe. Lao Tzu, in 6th century BC, and a contemporary of both Confucius and Lao Tzu, also wrote about love. "Here is the source of man's strength, lies not in himself but in his relation to other people. No matter how close to them he may be, if his center of gravity depends on them, he is inevitably tossed to and fro between joy and sorrow. Rejoicing to high heaven, then sad unto death, This is the fate of those who depend upon an inner accord with other persons whom they love. Here we have the only statement of the law that this is so. Whether this condition is felt to be an affliction or the supreme happiness of love is left to the subjective verdict of the person concerned. Charles Darwin, in The Descent of Man, in 1875, wrote, "It is certain that associated animals have a feeling of love for each other, which is not felt by non-social adult animals. How far in most cases they actually sympathize in the pains and pleasures of others is more doubtful, especially with regard and respect to pleasures." So, by 1875, Charles Darwin at least recognized animals have a feeling of love. In fact, he talked about associated animals, which means social animals, and we can read further when we talk about animal rights in that lecture, discussing what are the differences between different sorts of animals in terms of their behavior. But at least it was recognized at this time in English scientific literature. Going back 3,000 years, in Psalm 25, King David writes, "Teach me your ways, O Lord, make them known to me. Teach me to live according to your truth, for you are my God who saves me. I always trust in you. Remember, O Lord, your kindness and constant love, which you have shown from long ago. Forgive the sins and errors of my youth. For your constant love and goodness, remember me, Lord. With faithfulness and love he leads all who keep his covenant and obey his commands." So here we see the idea that love comes from God, or God is expressing love, and that will give God patience. If we were to take this on board ourselves, if we really love others and love the good of our society, we will forgive others and work in love to build a better society together. Cyrus, in the 1st century Rome, which is 1,000 years later, makes a reflection. When you are in love, you are not wise. And when you are wise, you are not in love. Rather interesting saying, I think, talking about romantic love. And maybe this has some truth. Jesus Christ, in the Gospel according to St. John, is quoted, "And now I give you a new commandment, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. If you have love for one another, then everyone will know that you are my disciple." If we then look at this golden rule, it was applied in the most popular ethical theory of the current time, which is utilitarianism. Written by John Stuart Mill, he wrote, "In the golden rule of Jesus of Nazareth, we read the complete spirit of the ethics of utility. To do as you would be done by, and to love your neighbour as yourself, constitute the ideal perfection of utilitarian morality." And if you remember, John Stuart Mill was an English philosopher, and the book is on your reading list. Utilitarianism is only 16 pages long. It is a classic book. It's very easy and accessible to everyone. If you have to read one book on philosophy, please read this book. Of course, we hope you'll read more of the textbooks and chapters as well. But it's quite interesting as a reflection. Love is a rather simple message. Utilitarianism was a rather simple equation. Doesn't mean it's simple to do, but rather simple to discuss. And 16 pages was sufficient. Yet that ethical theory has shaped the concept of public utilities, public good, and pain and pleasure as a way to measure the impact of public policy. A 20th century utilitarian philosophy here wrote, utilitarianism is the extension into philosophy of the Christian doctrine of Agape. Here linking the words of, in a sense, of John Stuart Mill with the words in the Christian New Testament about Agape as one type of God, selfless love of God. Benedict Spinoza in Ethics in the 17th century said, "Love is nothing else but pleasure accompanied by the idea of an eternal cause. Hate is nothing else but pain accompanied by the idea of an eternal cause." So, as Spinoza would argue, if we're concerned about the eternal, and ethics certainly is, then we should act in love. Let's come back to Confucius after having looked at a few other philosophers of different times. In the Analects, there's several quotations that we can look at. Zigon asked, "Is there a single word such that one could practice it throughout one's life?" The Master said, "Reciprocity, perhaps. Do not inflict on others what you yourself would not wish done to you." This is the Golden Rule. This is 500 years before Jesus Christ. This is another expression of loving others as you love yourself. He said it again in another part of the Analects. Zhu Kang said, "What I do not want others to do to me, I do not want to do to them." Confucius says, "Sang, that is beyond you," which probably means that's pretty difficult to do. But love of life, love of others as you love yourself, this is the Golden Rule. And this is the essence of ethics. In the Babylonian Talmud, which is written in Persia around 30 AD, "What is hateful to you, do not to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah, while the rest is a commentary thereof. Go and learn it." So here we have the Golden Rule, probably written at a similar time to the time that Jesus is quoted as saying this as well, but from a Jewish perspective. And Jesus wrote in the Gospel according to St. John, "My commandment is this, love one another just as I love you. The greatest love a person can have for his friends is to give his life for them." Martin Luther King Jr. is a famous civil rights leader. Interesting person. There's a day of holiday in the United States of America named after him. He wrote a lot about love, and his philosophy was based on this. His PhD thesis was on the study of a theologian called Paul Tillich, and we'll come to his quotations soon. But it's not surprising then that he thought a lot about love, God's love, and love of people towards each other. And let's try and explore then this Greek word agape, which is one of the three Greek words commonly used in explaining about love. Agape is more than romantic love. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill to all men. It's an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is the love of God operating in the human heart. So that when one rises to love on this level, he loves men, not because he likes them, but not because their ways appeal to him, but he loves every man because God loves him. And he rises to the point of loving a person who does an evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. I think this is what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. I'm very happy that he didn't say, like your enemies, because it's pretty difficult to like some people. Like is sentimental. And it's pretty difficult to like someone bombing your home. It's pretty difficult to like somebody threatening your children. It's difficult to like congressmen who spend all their time trying to defeat civil rights. But Jesus says love them, and love is greater than like. So this is a personal reflection of how he dealt with being a victim of attacks, including physical attacks, yet trying to live according to the golden rule, love others as you love yourself. So he distinguishes love and like. Soran Kogasgard in Sweden wrote, erotic love is determined by the object. Friendship is determined by the object. Only love to one's neighbour is determined by love. Since one's neighbour is every man, unconditionally every man, all distinctions are indeed removed from the object. The category neighbour is just like the category human being. Every one of us is a human being, and at the same time the heterogeneous individual which he is by particularity. But being a human being is the fundamental qualification. Botus in Rome, 500 AD, who would give a law to lovers? Love is unto itself a higher law. In another quotation on romantic love, Plautus, find me a rational lover and I'll give you his weight in gold. Well, and Dostoevsky in Russia, with love one can live even without happiness. So, it's an interesting quotation given that happiness is the pursuit of ethics. Can we live without happiness? Well, perhaps we can. So we've seen some of the quotations about love. We could look at more and more, and in the written text you can see more. But love is clearly a word in every language. The use of these words vary widely within each language and between them. The English word love, used in this book, which is first written in English, has a number of meanings. That's why Greek is sometimes used to separate these components, following a philosophical tradition. I do not restrict the use of love used in this book to the meaning close to the Greek word agape, or love of neighbour, however. We have to look back and really look at the meaning of love and its holistic aspects, not just trying to pick up parts that appear to be convenient to a given morality, or the morality of the time. Agape is independent and unalterable towards all persons and works for the active benefit of neighbour, not self-benefit. That's why it's selfless love. There's a range of definitions used for agape, as will be discussed in this analysis of writings that people have made, but generally they are consistent with quite a range. Agape has been translated as charity by times. Tillich, in 1939, in Morality and Beyond, proposed that the Greek word agape be used instead of love and ethics, as it was more specific for the intended meaning of selfless love by many writers, but not all. There are several words that have been used as other languages to express agape, divine love, expressed as a self-giving grace, and we can see this caritas in Latin, karuna in Sanskrit, used in Buddhism, prema in Sanskrit, which is used in Hinduism, Raman in Arabic, Chen Ai in Chinese, Upenda, Swahili, Hesed in Hebrew. Karuna can be said to be all actions that diminish the suffering of others in Hinduism, while in Buddhism it's more closer to compassion. And compassion, of course, very close to love. However, human beings are motivated by more than love of neighbour, as explored in the chapters of this book. The biological urge or desire to enjoy has used eros, Greek, amor in Latin, or karma in Sanskrit. The friendly love or affection that extends to either gender with feelings of altruistic generosity has been expressed by the terms philia in Greek, delicio in Latin, sneda or pravata in Sanskrit. There is a discussion of these terms by many philosophers, but the point is that the concepts across the world are universal in many major cultural systems. Many languages have more than one word for love, but still the same problems of individual or contextual variation and interpretation of a word applies. For example, the phrase, "I love you," can be expressed to a child, a lover, a friend, but each person will differ in how readily the expression is used. The same way that signing a letter with the words, "Love Darryl," for example, can be meant in different ways towards many different friends and interpreted in many ways by the recipients. This variation in interpretation may be one reason for caution shown in many cultures against using the term love in everyday conversation. The variety of meanings seen in many languages, English and Japanese being just two of them. It is also caution for examining the same words used over time, as meanings change as languages develop. There have been a number of books written on love, though many focus on romantic love. There's a long history of folklore about love as well. No doubt love can be found in all societies. It would be impossible for me to study all the languages of the world or list the words used for love. But a few examples might help us understand the word, whatever languages we use. And there's been some major works exploring love across cultures and through history. It's not my purpose also to repeat those works, but rather to explore aspects that are most relevant to bioethics. Singer, in a set of 3 volumes on the nature of love, explores the Greco-Western tradition with much analysis of religious and romantic love. So that would be an interesting part for you to start. But it focuses again on Greco-Western tradition. Across every indigenous tradition, across every part of the world, there are different traditions of love. In the languages that you know yourself, can you think about the meaning of love? I'd be very happy to receive comments or reports on the meaning of love. And in fact, that would be a good work to do at home, to supplement the assessment of these lectures. What are the words for love in your language? Where do they originate? How broadly are they used? And how would you translate it into one of the terms that I might be more familiar with, such as in English? Love is also taught to every children at a young age. We teach in every culture we should love. In Tonga, Ofa, which means all forms of love, and Feofa Ofane, caring love as a family, are some of the basic values taught to children from a young age, which influence their behavior. These concepts are expressed in the way that Pacific Islanders care for the sick, often meaning family members will accompany the sick person to the hospital and a relative will always stay with the person day and night in the hospital. Love is linked to social systems. In the Amusha people of Peru, one of the surviving indigenous communities in South America, the generation of power and authority is linked to love and compassion. Knowledge or power that is not informed by love ceases to be legitimate and may eventually be questioned. A loving and compassionate individual is one who not only cares for those who have less than herself, but also expresses control over his emotional life, thus restraining such dangerous passions as hatred. Hatred is counter to love. That's eliminated. As many of the references in the previous section show, love is considered also as a trait of God. Spinoza regarded love as highest attribute of God. So does Sufism. There are several Arabic words for love. The Arabic word for ardent love is ishq, derived from ashkar, which means a creeper called lublab in the Arabic. When a creeper twines itself around a tree, it deprives it of its leaves and fruits. When love takes root in the heart of a lover, only the beloved can be seen. Another word is mahabba, Arabic for affection, which is derived from hub, which means a seed. The same as when love is sown in the heart, it grows like a seed, developing into a plant. Going beyond extreme in affection is love. Love signifies excessive or intense affection. But there are different ideas on the stages of affection and love expressed by writers about Islam, and a long tradition of love poems. Mao Tzu, as we talked about, lived in the 6th century BC China, and he had an opposing view to Confucius, who believed that people should love their family first and other persons to lesser degrees. Mao Tzu believed that human love should be modelled on the will of heaven, which he argued loves everyone equally. Love should be extended to all persons everywhere without distinction, and condemned the ethic of family loyalty, blaming it as a cause for social conflict and warfare. He wrote, "Everyone regarded his father, his elder brother, and his ruler, just as he did himself, towards whom would we be lacking in devotion? Could there be any thieves or robbers? Would noble clans contend among themselves? Would states attack each other? If everyone in the world practiced universal love, then the whole world would enjoy peace and perfect order." Mao Tzu distinguished love from emotional experiences of the heart, identifying it wholly with the mind, so it's actually a rational love. While he allowed for differential treatment that the practice of filial piety, family love, implies, he treated the limits in caring only for one's own had to be strictly enforced when it ceased to be beneficial for all. So in construction of a society for public policy, in a sense, we should form this public policy based on love and force people to love each other. Taoism is a different religion, coming from the 6th century BC Chinese thinker Tao Te. Taoism was considered a revolt against Buddhism that was being imported at the time, but actually copied much of a Buddhist organization. The life of the perfect man is governed by and manifests the primary virtues of love, compassion, patience, meekness, tenderness, and an unconditional generosity towards all living beings. It's actually quite a biocentric form of love. It includes all human beings. Han Yu in the 8th century AD wrote that universal love is humanity, with the term Po-ai instead of the Maoist term of mutual love, Chen-ai, or the Buddhist compassion. By the way, he made a different term to the Confucian or Taoist notion. Chang Tsai in the 11th century explored the virtue Jian, which has been used for love in the Han Dynasty. Universal love is not mere identification with things, but the actual operation of a principle which combines things as one. At a similar time, Chang Ai considered humanity and the nature of people, while love is appealing, although a man of humanity would love universally, because humanity is Jian and love. So that is showing across different major cultures there are concepts of love. We can see that love is a broad concept and has been developed extensively in literature and philosophy around the world. Singer listed some of the distinct kinds of love. Love of self, of mankind, of nature, of God, of mother, of father, of children, of tribe, of nation, of sweetheart and spouse and sexual idol, of material possessions, of food or drink, of action or repose, of sports or hobbies, of engrossing pursuits, of justice, of science, of truth, of beauty, and so on endlessly. What do you love? When have you last used the term love before this lecture? Do you love to study? Do you love your car? Do you love the people around you? Do you love your pet? Do you love bioethics? I hope so. Rather, the power of love that is common to all these expressions of love may be a force which can unify not only the objects of love, but also the kinds of love and the types of relationship that love creates. We are faced with many challenges when talking about love, as all readers will surely know. Love is seldom felt to be the same by two people at the same time. A precious experience for one in a relationship may mean nothing to another. Romantic love is difficult, but so too are the expressions of love in the fullest sense that the word is intended, as seen in this chapter. In following chapters, we'll look at the expression of love that relate to bioethical concepts after a discussion of theories of bioethics. And we will not go on to theories about bioethics and love in this talk. We will save that for the next lecture. But I hope this chapter of What is Love has been interesting. I would like you to write as the assignment for this section and this lecture. What is love? Write about it. What does it mean to you? Use the words, for example, in your own language, Indigenous culture, in tradition. How has this changed? Is love still useful as something which you can make moral decisions on? Love seems to be something which we can agree on around the world, and that's what this chapter has been talking about. But how can I now relate it to my professional life? How can we relate it to moral theories about what is right and what is wrong? How can we relate it to public policy making? Whether we will decide to build a dam, whether we will cut down the forest, whether we will support euthanasia or not, whether we will allow people access to antibiotics in the shops or through a doctor's prescription. These are all questions of bioethics. Of course, love demands in our soul somewhat greater, a love of social justice, construction of a world which is better than we are today. But we have to relate our theory to not only these grandiose questions of the meaning of life and the whole of our existence, but how do we become better people? How do we judge others? Should we judge others? How should God judge us? And is not love a concept which in some form has been expressed in every culture? So we will find further writings about this. It is a topic which people have done research on. You're welcome to write more. Every great philosopher has written about this subject, and it's time that you think about it. Its meaning is quite critical to our existence and to our bioethic. Look forward to your work and hope you could learn more. Have a good day.